With their great wisdom, we will welcome Jack Jezreel. Jack has a BA degree in religion and philosophy from Furman University in 1979 and a master's degree from the University of Notre Dame in 1982. From 83 to 86, Jack was a member of the Catholic worker community. During that time, he helped supervise a soup kitchen and 3 hospitality houses for women and men that were homeless. Jack also became interested in sustainable issues and was involved in organic agriculture from 1985 to 2000. Jack has worked for over 30 years in parish social ministry. For 8 of those years, Jack served as a minister of social responsibility at the Church of the Epiphany in Louisville, Kentucky. He developed the Just Faith program, which many of you are aware of. Has worked with justice and charity, and over 50,000 people across the country have been engaged in the program of Just Faith. So lots of people have been connected to that over the years. In 1995, Jack received the Peace and Justice Award from the Archdiocese of Louisville, and it's in 2006, and received the Roundtable Social Action Director's prestigious Harry A. Fagan Award, and also more recently, the Franciscan Mission Service Anselm Moon's OFM Award in recognition of his contributions to the formation of new disciples for peace, justice, and hope. Jack is the founder of Just Faith, which creates and supports formation processes intended to inspire commitment to social mission. He's a popular, well-traveled speaker across the country and teacher, sometimes described as the Johnny Appleseed of the U.S. Church's social mission. He lives in Louisville, Kentucky, has a ridiculous large garden, he says, is married with Maggie and have 3 adult daughters. With that, let us welcome Mr. Jack Jezreel.
Good morning. Oh, I already messed up again. Let's try again. Good morning. How many of you heard me speak before? A few. And somebody, so this is going to be very funny to you. Somebody said, we're probably not going to be able to hear you. For those who've heard me before, that actually was funny, but. Well, you heard the formal introduction. Here's how my middle daughter describes what her dad does when she was in middle school. She was playing in the living room. I was in the next room, and her and her friend were talking about. Her friend says, "My daddy is a lawyer. What does your daddy do?" And she says, "He goes to churches and he yells." And it is true that in the work of social mission, those of us who've been doing this work for a while have sometimes described our work this way: to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. Can you guess which one I'm going to do today? So all this is just to say that I'm going to try to nudge and challenge a bit, not quite frankly on my own behalf, but in this case on behalf of some words of Pope Francis. So all this is just to say to be ready for, if you will, a bit of a challenge. I'm also aware, I was giving a talk about 4 or 5 years ago, and one of the texts that we were using was the rich young man text. You know, the rich young man comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do to inherit everlasting life?" And Jesus says, "You have to sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then come follow me." And so we were trying to sort of pull that apart, and it's quite frankly a very challenging text, right? So after we worked with it for about an hour and a half, by the way, am I too loud? It sounds loud to me. Who can turn me down? Well, I could talk softer. I feel like Tina Turner, though. You know, it's like we never do anything nice and soft. Do we? Like, so, is this better? Is this better? So this is about that. This is about the volume I'm going to use, if this sounds right to everybody. Is this good? Okay. Anyway, so at the break, after we've been sort of trying to pull apart this really challenging text from the rich young man piece, at the break, this woman comes up to me like this. What does Jesus want? And I said, probably not very helpfully, as far as I can tell, everything. And on one hand, that is actually the case, right? I mean, Jesus wants our hearts, right? Our minds, the mind of Christ, our time, our energy, our gifts, our love, our commitments, our lives, right? And on one hand, it sounds from a distance kind of daunting, and on the other hand, it's good news, right? Because as we make that, if you will, giving over, what becomes ours is abundant life, right? And what I mean by that is not life after we die. I'm not talking just about that. I'm talking about the intersection of a life so well lived here and now that it intersects with God's life, which is unbounded by time and space. In other words, we get a taste of the eternal by making commitments in the here and now on behalf of God to each other. So far, so good? And so prayer becomes, if you don't mind, I'm going to use the carpet. Prayer becomes your will and not mine be done. So whenever we pray seriously, when we pray authentically, what we're saying is, I'm open for business. I'm available. Now, the minute we're not available is the minute we have a 5-year plan, a retirement plan, that knows exactly what our life is going to look like for the next 5 or 10 years, prayer necessarily has to shut down. You might get on your knees, you might say Jesus words, but you're not available for business because you're static. You've set, you know what you're going to do, you know exactly how it's going to go, and at that moment, prayer becomes ineffective. So prayer is always, when it's authentic, includes getting ourselves on our knees saying, I'm listening. Now, if you're listening, what does that mean? Well, if God speaks, you say, now I'm not listening. Because actually that happens a lot in the scriptures, right? God says, I'd like you to do this. I said, no, I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't like those people. Or whatever it is. There's all kinds of excuses given. And we do that too, right? I mean, we do that too. And so the challenge for us is how do we genuinely be open to what the voice of God might speak? And part of my interest in sharing that with you is, quite frankly, my brothers and sisters, Pope Francis is saying things that are really challenging the socks off of us. That's a technical, theological, spiritual exercise. And so what I'd like to do with you as leadership of the church, right? You are the folks making big commitments, is to speak about a possibility of an evolution of the parish. Now, one of the lovely things about what's happened in the last 50 years with science is we know so much more about the universe than we knew just 50 years ago. And one of the things we're knowing is that evolution is not over. Like, did you know that since yesterday, this is true, since yesterday, some stars in our universe are 1 million miles further apart than they were 24 hours ago? How could that be? But it is. In other words, the world is still happening. Creation didn't have a moment and it's done. It's still happening. Creation and redemption in some ways are tied together. They're evolving. And in many ways, that's exciting because it helps us think creatively with imagination about what the future of us as a people of faith could look like. And Pope Francis has something, quite frankly, very interesting in mind that I'd like to share with you this morning. And it's a big dream. So in many ways, this is meant to prompt your own imaginations, your own creativity, your own enthusiasm about what the future could look like if we take Pope Francis, and I would, quite frankly, I'd say this, if we take Jesus seriously. Because Pope Francis, as far as I can tell, is saying nothing new. He's just reiterating and making clear and challenging us with a model of church that takes Jesus very seriously. So that's what I'd like to talk about. Now, I think I'll start here. No, I'll start here. So I passed out a handout. Look at me. Look, all eyes on me. Do not look at the handout. Okay? And this is the problem with handouts, right? Everybody wants to read them. Because, in fact, all the secrets of the mysteries of the universe are on that paper, and so it's going to be tough not to look at it. But I'm just asking you not to do it for a few minutes. So what I'd like to do is just to introduce the thought here. About 12 months into Pope Francis's papacy, he was meeting with a group of journalists, and one of the journalists, an Italian, asked him, what are you up to? The phrasing in Italian was really, what's your kind of Pope project? What are you hoping to accomplish as Pope? Obviously leadership, but where are you going? Now you would have thought, wouldn't you? I mean, I would have thought, that at that moment Pope Francis says to himself, photo opportunity, right? Great question. I'm going to look pondersome, prayerful, pause for a few pregnant moments while you get a chance to take a picture, and then I'll give you your answer. But no, that's not what happened, of course. I'm being playful. What happened was not even a half a second went by, and Pope Francis said this, I'd like to complete Vatican II. Now, a lot of you are nodding your heads because you know what he's up to. But for the journalists there who might not have been theologically informed, a lot of them were scratching their heads saying, well, that was 50 years ago. What do you mean complete Vatican II? It's done. But from Pope Francis's view, it is not. Pope Francis, in many, many places where he's written about Vatican II and his papacy, talks about the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, in a kind of evolutionary form, where the Spirit is nudging the church into becoming what it is meant to become. And that Vatican II is part of that nudging of the Holy Spirit for the church to become what it was meant to be. And in many, many places, when asked if the church has fulfilled its Vatican II mission, he gives a very long answer, like, no. That really is his response. So again, if this is unfamiliar to you, let me tease this out a little bit for you. And the way I'm going to do it, this is just one brushstroke, kind of snapshot way to do it, because I asked the organizers for 4.5 hours, but they only gave me 1 hour and 15 minutes. So this will be a little bit oversimplified, but I think it'll still help you see. So if we talk about the transition from Vatican I to Vatican II, one of the, I think, the reasonable ways to talk about that transition is that in the 20th, and now the 21st century, but in the 20th century, the leadership of the church, informed by pastors and the experience of the faithful around the world, began to sense this need for a kind of, if you will, we could say it this way, a fine-tuning, a retuning, some, if you will, massaging into a different direction. But there was a sense that something needed to happen in the church. Some people will say John the 23rd was worried about a church that was beginning to feel a little static. And so, we hear about John the 23rd opening the windows so that the Spirit can blow in and nudge a little bit. And so one of the ways to describe the church a la Vatican I is to draw from a tool that all of you who are at least as old as I am, I'm 60, remember well. This was the tool by which any new Catholic, young or old, coming into the church would have been introduced to, and the tool was the primary, and in some cases, the only tool used to form would-be, and in fact, de facto Catholics in their faith. And this tool, which began in the late 1800s and was the primary tool until 1970s or so, that tool was called the Baltimore Catechism. Right. Now, how many of you think you remember the Baltimore Catechism really well? Oh, okay. So what was the answer to question 508? Well, actually, question 508 was this. Why did Christ institute the church? It's a big question. It's one of the really big Baltimore Catechism questions, because what it's asking is, why does the church exist? What is its purpose? What is its mission? What is its ministries, actually? All that's implied in the question. The answer to the question was this: to teach, to govern, and to sanctify, and to save all men, and a few women. To teach, to govern, and to sanctify. And that's what I want to spend my time looking at. To teach, to govern, and to sanctify. Now, if the work of the church, if the mission of the church, if the purpose of the church is to teach, to govern, and to sanctify, then one of the questions that Vatican II asks of Vatican I is this: who actually do this ministry? Right? Who are the active agents of teaching, governing, and sanctifying? And the answer was clergy. Right? At the time of the Second Vatican Council, the agents of ministry, again, I'm defining it a la the Baltimore Catechism, teaching, governing, and sanctifying. Who did that work? Clergy. And they did it great, right? Now, with a couple of bishops in the room, it wouldn't behoove me to say anything that's anti-clerical, right? And this is not. It's just an observation of who was actually doing the work. Now, and so many of us, myself, in an enormous way, I have nothing but an enormous debt of gratitude to about 15 priests in my life who changed my life, really, right? From Notre Dame back to when I was a little guy. So this is not meant to be a criticism. But here's the problem. If less than 1% of the community that calls itself Catholic are the active agents of ministry, what are the other 99% doing? They are the recipients of their care. Is that such a bad thing? It is not. However, while it is a good in and of itself, by itself it is incomplete. The problem with defining the 99% as the recipients of ministry is that it's primarily a passive role. Right? Right? And so I remember when I came out of Notre Dame, I had an MDiv. This was in 1982. And I went to this conference, and the conference was, there was a big controversy. Could you put the word lay and ministry together? No, you guys laugh, but that was true. That was true in that time period. Was it really appropriate to put lay and ministry together? Because did that make any sense? So this just reinforces the point. But through the lens of Vatican II, ministry, active ministry, is not just associated with the sacrament of holy orders. Ministry is associated with what sacrament? Baptism. Who's called to do ministry? Everybody. Now, here's the good news. In 50 years, think about this. In 50 years, if you had gone back to, let's just say, what's the date today? May 20, whatever it is. Go back 50 years to 1967, and your parish bulletin looked like this. Well, it didn't look like that, but I mean, a single page. Had the Mass times, right? Had the confession times, had when the Altar Society was meeting, you know. Now, I go to parishes today, and maybe this is one of them. I do a lot of traveling, and I stay there's a bulletin. Great. And and there are bulletins that look like the Sunday version of the New York Times. And you think, the only thing I have time to do this week is to read the bulletin before Mass starts again next Sunday. And they're fat, they're huge. And you page through them, and there's 148 ministries in the bulletin. And it's amazing. And guess who leads these ministries? The baptized. Who thought of them in some cases? The baptized. Who populates them? The baptized, right? And so parishes in just 50 years, which is like 10 minutes in church dog years, right? It's just like nothing. And you've got this extraordinary evolution. You know, church doesn't move this fast typically. But in 50 years, we become a beehive. When I travel around the country, it's not. And typically, you would expect the building campaign means one of two things, typically. And one of the things is we're building a new sanctuary because we need a bigger worship space, right? Or we're building a school. Guess what I see all the time now? We're building more classrooms. Not for the school, but for the beehive. We don't have enough room to meet. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, there are not enough rooms for the number of things going on in the church. Right? My voice just changed. So there's an extraordinary sea change in what we call Catholic. All for the good. That's the good news. Here's the not so good news. Okay? The not so good news is this. Go back to the definition: to teach, to govern, and to sanctify. The second question that Vatican II asks about Vatican I is not who, but where. Okay, the definition is ministry, mission, purpose, to teach, to govern, and to sanctify. Where does teaching, governing, and sanctifying mostly happen? Parish block. The parish block. Now let me give you a snapshot of Jack 50 years ago exactly. So I grew up in Clearwater, Florida. I went to St. Cecilia's Catholic Church, which was the only church in town at the time, and St. Cecilia's Catholic School. It was Sunday morning, and me and my brothers and my sister, we'd all run out of the house because it's Sunday morning, we were going to Mass, and we all hop into what was called a station wagon. You know what a station wagon is? It's a football field on wheels. And it felt like that because at the time, a particular device had not yet been invented. It was called seat belts. So it was a great time to be a kid in a car unless you got into an accident. So my brothers and we would jump it, and the minute we got in the car, the first thing out of our mouth was, "You touched me." Which was just the beginning of the chaos that was about to ensue. So immediately, some of my brothers, they get in the back seat, the third seat, and someone was getting the second seat, and we would take my sister and throw her back and forth. And you might ask why, and the answer is because we could, you see. So it was just chaos, right? Just an extraordinary chaos. So we're driving to church. We go by the high school. It's pandemonium in the back. We go by the railroad tracks. It's chaos in the back. We go by, the next thing, tumult in the back. And then, the right front tire touches the church parking lot. And because all of us went to St. Cecilia's Catholic School, we all had nuns for teachers, and we knew exactly what we were supposed to do. This is what we did. Now, this is true. This is true. We park. We would all silently get out of the car. We would get in order, and we would follow my parents to Mass. Now, I have to tell you, for me, this was a great experience. It really was, because the minute those doors opened, I was like, I just loved stained glass windows. I just loved them, right? I walk in, there's no place like this place, right? All this color and what, and then things would happen during Mass. Like, first of all, there was a strange language, and I knew why. God only speaks Latin. So you have to speak Latin for God to understand what's happening, even though we didn't, right? And then this was the best part. I'm a young boy, right? What's the thing I most like to do in my life? Light fires where I'm not supposed to. So then they light a fire up on the altar. There's smoke billowing. I turn to my mom and say, "Mom, can we do that at home?" She said, "No, you can't." And then, like in my church, I think they did something wrong with the pews, because when I sat in the pews, I would be back like this, and I'd have to grip. And I thought, man, this prayer thing is hard. And it was, so there was that, right? And then there were men in black, right? And they were all holy men. And there were women in black wearing impossible headgear. And they were holy women. And the whole thing was so mysterious. It was unlike anything else that happened in my life. I immediately decided I wanted to be a priest at age 5. So, Mass would end. We'd get in single file again, not having spoken a word for the last hour, or 45 minutes, or 35 if he was on a roll. And we'd get back, and we'd march back to the car. We'd sit down quietly and wait and then the left front tire would touch the road, and pandemonium started all over again. And for the next 6 days and 23 hours, it was back to, I'll use the phrase, ordinary time. And the point was this. Now, I'm talking about this through the lens of a 10-year-old boy. I knew where God was. I knew where the holy stuff was. I knew where faith got lived out. It was on the block. Because nothing we did on the block did we do any other time. My family never prayed together. We didn't light incense. We didn't wear habits. All of that happened on the block. And as a young guy who thought he was going to be a priest, I knew where I was going to spend most of my adult life, on the block. And I really imagined that's where the holy things are. Now, you get the snapshot, you get the impression, you get the image. I'm not saying it's right, of course. I'm saying it's the impression, it's the experience. So in contrast to that, you've got Vatican II, which says ministry happens where? Everywhere. And one of the best indicators of that happens near the end of liturgy, when there is this theologically sublime, spiritually powerful word, and the word is go. Now, it's not go, it's time to vacuum. Or it's not go, we've prayed enough. It's part of ascending right? It's this, having broken bread, shared a cup, having experienced the living presence of Christ among us, there is one thing critical to be done now, and that is to be Christ's presence in the world. Right? So let's pretend we're told to go. So I'll be part of the congregation. Like, here we've been for the last hour or so. We know when to stand and kneel and sit. We know when to join hands at the Our Father if you do that. We know how to get in the communion line. We know the responses to the prayers. And all that's fabulous because there's nothing like praying together. It just creates new energy in a way that just about nothing else does. But then we're told to go. We turn around and we go toward the exit doors. And then we get toward the exit doors, and maybe we pause at the exit doors to imagine, now what do we do? To be Christ's presence in the world, right? The world we go to, I will remind you of parts of it this morning. It's back to the station wagon, so it's back to family. How do I be Christ's presence in my family? It's back to work. How do I be a holy presence where I work? It's back to a world in which, now listen up, 2 billion people live on $3 a day. It's a world in which 1 billion people live on $2 a day. It's a world in which one of the largest industries on the planet is sex trafficking and growing. It's a country in which 1 in 6 children lives with food insecurity, which means they do not know if they will eat tomorrow. 1 in 6 of our children in this country does not know if they will eat tomorrow. And I could go on, couldn't I? There's a long, long list when you take that front page of the newspaper out and take a look. And that's the world we go to. And my brothers and sisters, I mean no disrespect from this, but you realize at that point as you go out those doors, knowing when to kneel, stand, and sit isn't going to get it done out there. And suddenly we realize we have to be equipped with something other than just a wish, a hope, a sentiment that maybe the world could get better, please God. That's our work. To be Christ's presence is to be a healing, among other things, is to be a healing presence in a world of hurt, right? And it's no wonder, when you look at the life of Jesus, why he spends so much time in the wounded places. Everybody with me? So here's the bad news. Remember the parishes that have 148 ministries going on in their bulletin? Guess where 146 of them are, where they happen? Parish property. Now, this is a brushstroke, right? I don't really know that. 146 out of 148. It wasn't scientific. But it's true enough to speak it. that parishes, by and large, have a lot of work to do, and a lot of that work is defined by what needs to happen here. Don't hear me as being a crabby, actually, Pope Francis told me, no sourpusses. He said that in Joy of the Gospel, so I'm trying my best, no sourpusses. But the reality is, parishes, the work of parishes has largely been on parish property. And of those 148 meetings that are happening, who are the focus? People in the parish. By and large, people in the parish. Now, when we think about what is Pope Francis's dream, the completion of Vatican II, what do you think it is? It is everybody ministering where? Everywhere. Not just the parish block. Are you with me? So what I'd like to do is now, and only now, you may look at your pages. And Bill, can I get that microphone if it's still working? And I would like a nice, strong voice. Testing. Sorry, on the bottom. Testing. Testing again. There we go. Could I have a nice, strong voice read the first excerpt from Joy of the Gospel that's on your sheet there? Would somebody be willing to do that? Thank you. Great.
I want to emphasize that what I am trying to express here has a programmatic significance and important consequences. I hope that all communities will devote the necessary effort to advancing along the path of a pastoral and missionary conversion, which cannot leave things as they presently are.
Thank you. This is from paragraph 25, if you're taking notes. And so the first thing you notice is the Pope is actually writing something that he actually hopes will have practical consequences, which is just interesting because sometimes papal statements are very theological. They're really intended in some ways for leadership in the church who then disseminate them and translate them for local application. The Pope here is hoping that this has practical consequences. But and then you see at the very end of that excerpt, things have to change. Cannot leave things as they presently are. The Pope has clearly got something in mind. And now I want to give you the real gem of this text. And the gem of this text is that bolded phrase, missionary conversion. Now, you know what conversion means, right? Change, a transformation. But missionary is the interesting word here. Now, in the document Joy of the Gospel, the word missionary or mission or missional shows up 112 times in this document, more than by far any other word. So what I'd like to share with you is Francis' understanding of mission or missionary. One of his favorite phrases, by the way, as you've probably heard this, is missionary disciples. He wants the parish to be a community of missionary disciples. Not 2, not 7, not 1/3, the whole community, missionary disciples. So what does missionary mean for a Jesuit who acts like a Franciscan? A Jesuit, and a man from South America. Those things have tremendous impact on his understanding. So this is how missionary discipleship or a missionary conversion looks. So this is my hometown. These are the people who love me. These are the people who have nourished my life from the time I was a little boy. It's my family. Now, this is if you're lucky. We all know there are stories about children growing up that are not this kind. So this is the best case scenario. But I had a great family. I had a wonderful neighborhood. I had a lovely school. I had a good church. And I became a man, okay? A missionary discipleship looks like this. I'll be back. Hi. It's a displacement. It's a voluntary displacement. And it's not random. It's not anything goes. I'm gonna go from Minneapolis and I'm going to Seattle. That's not it. It could be that, but that's not the point. The point is that as I'm gathered here, I've been nourished and nurtured in love, and I'm going to say for a moment, I've been nourished and nurtured in the opportunity to follow Jesus. And as I've been formed as a young man, something happens and I feel this tug. And the tug is a kind of spiritual compass. And this spiritual compass guides my steps. And it's the same spiritual compass that guided Jesus' steps. And the spiritual compass is defined by the gift that was given to me by a loving community that has impressed upon me the answer to a question that all of you know, which is, who are my brothers and sisters? The answer is everybody. And what guides my steps is who has been left behind, who's been abandoned, who's been beat up, who's had bombs dropped on their heads, who doesn't have enough food, who's been betrayed, who's being left out, whose hometown has been destroyed and is looking for a new place. And that's what guides my steps, you see. And so what I do is I simply relocate myself just to be with this community. Now notice, what is not involved is this. I'll just use this example because it's common and it's something it's happened many times, right? So here I am. I'm ready to go. Oh, there is a poor, darker-skinned community who needs a white man to help them with all their problems. Here I come. And so, before we meet, I just want you to know I have all the answers. Right? It's not that at all. The first step is I make myself available as a friend. I bring my heart. I don't bring a lot of stuff. I don't bring a lot of answers. I just bring myself. Some of you know the name Greg Boyle. Greg Boyle is a Jesuit who works with gangs in Los Angeles. And Greg often makes this comment. It's just wonderful. He's riffing off of Pope Paul VI. And Pope Paul VI said this, as you know, if you want peace, work for justice. And the logic of that, as you could probably, I know you've already figured out, is if you really want peace in the world, you've got to make sure everybody's living a dignified life. Because if their children are starving, they will do desperate things, including pick up guns. So if you make peaceful transformation impossible, John F. Kennedy said, you make violent revolution inevitable. Okay, so that's the link between peace and justice. But Father Greg Boyle makes this observation. There will never be justice until there is kinship, relationship, love. So the first thing that happens when I leave is not, I got all the stuff, I got all the answers. No, the first thing is, I just brought my heart. I would like to become friends. And if there's any way in time that I might be helpful, I'd be glad to do that. Are you with me? In other words, what happens is over the course of time, by the logic of affection and intimacy and friendship and collegiality, then some things can begin to happen. Now, just to share with you a story, in Louisville, Kentucky, probably like Minneapolis, but in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm from, there is 9th Street. 9th Street is a huge, invisible, very powerful wall. On one side of 9th Street are largely, these are generalizations, but it's true, largely people of color who are poor, and the other side of 9th Street is largely white people, relatively wealthy. And in Louisville, Kentucky, it's very difficult for people on one side to imagine going to the other side without a lot of cause. So, I've given you the description, now I'm going to tell you a story. So, occasionally a parish will invite me to do some consultation with them, and this is what they'll say. Could you help us with our social ministry? And I say, well, what do you have in mind? And they say, well, we really get the charity thing. Oh, good. But we don't get the justice thing. So, really? Well, now what they mean is this. We get the emergency assistance project. What we don't get is trying to address the root causes of the problem. So, for example, they're really good at soup kitchens, but they're not so good at helping the livable wage campaign. Are you with me? You get the difference? Okay, so I'm talking with them. I said, so you're really good at the charity thing. Tell me about that. Well, they said, after the Haiti earthquake many years ago, we collected $17,000 that weekend. And I say, wow, that's a lot of cash. What else? And they said, you need another example? I said, yeah. And they said, well, St. Vincent de Paul is last month was collecting used mattresses, and we collected 842 used mattresses. And I say, that's a lot of mattresses. What else? And they say, you need another example? And I say, yes. And they say, well, the Lions Club is collecting used eyeglass frames, so we collected 42,687,517,612 eyeglass. I say, that is a lot of eyeglass frames. What else? And they say, what else do you need? And I say this. Well, so far, nothing you've described is charity. And they say, it's not? And I say, no. Charity is yourself. The first step is not mattresses. The first step is your love. St. Vincent de Paul said this, the poor will forgive you for your gift of food by feeling your love, by feeling your presence, right? So a lot of people think charity, I'm from my side of town, I'm in the white, wealthy side of town, they think charity goes like this. I got my truck, I got 842 mattresses on the back, I drive up to 9th Street, the invisible wall, and I get out my catapult, and I start catapulting mattresses over the invisible wall. And then after I'm done, I say, good luck, and I drive home. But you see, charity begins and can only happen with this step. I refuse to honor the power of the diabolical wall. I'm going in. And so I leave my loving, nourishing community. I go through. And then I sit down. That is missionary discipleship. And that is what Pope Francis wants every one of us and every one of our parishioners to be about. More about that in just a second. Now, there's one other thing that I have to mention because it's so central to Francis's understanding of why this is important. Because you've probably been hearing this word lately, encuentro, and there have been some good definitions and some really, quite frankly, not so good definitions. Here's Francis's definition. When I come over here, I may think that I'm coming to be helpful, that I'm coming to maybe make some change here that's going to be nice for people. And there's lots of stories of people who, with a lot of bad reasons, dislocate. But here's what they find out. They stay. They begin to form friendships. They fall in love. Their hearts get big. And they are utterly transformed by the experience. You know this story. How many of you are familiar with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps? So the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, for those who haven't heard about it before, is obviously started by the Jesuits. It's mostly for young people who are graduating from college. And they spend a year domestically or 2 years internationally working in poor communities. Now, a lot of them think to themselves like this. I'll make up a story. John, who's going to go to Georgetown Law School, says to himself and says to his parents, I've had everything in my life. I should help somebody else, so I'm going to take a year off and live in the inner city Detroit and help poor people, right? And so off he goes, and all the Jesuits let him do is be present, teach some school maybe, just to be present, to build relationships, and then John is utterly transformed. And in the Jesuit tradition, the phrase they use, does anybody know it? Ruined for life. Because what John thought he was going to do was go to Georgetown, get a very expensive degree, become a high-powered lawyer, live in a huge house with lots of money and 6 collies. And what happens is, after the experience, his life is never the same. He's like the rich young man. It's all different, right? And the Jesuits have made a career out of ruining people's lives, starting at 22. But that story comes in a lot of different packages. You could tell that story 1,000 different ways, including, I'll bet, lots of women religious that I've seen in the room who've had the experience of living in high despair, low economic conditions in which people are struggling and suffering, and by their presence have discovered a new life because of the affections they've experienced. So my brothers and sisters, that's the logic of missionary discipleship. In other words, we're called to displace ourselves. Why? For two reasons, really. One is so we can be changed. There is a phrase that I've gotten fond of using, which is, how do we put ourselves in grace's way? You know the phrase, how do we put ourselves in harm's way? That means a kid playing near a railroad track. And what it means, of course, is that you put yourself in a place you'll probably get hurt. Now, to put yourself in grace's way is to put your physical body and yourself in a place where there's a long track record of people being changed by being there. Now, I'll tell you where grace does not abound. The 17th green. Right? Not many powerful spiritual transformations have happened before the tee shot on the 17th green. I'm not meaning to poke fun at golfers. It's just that's not a spiritually rich place. However, every single time somebody displaces themselves and puts them in a place where they can see the eyes and feel the hands and hear the voices of those who've been left behind, to be touched by their story, to meet their children, and to think about the narrative of why they are where they are, almost always is transformative. And just to prove it, how many in this room have traveled to a third world country for the purpose of being in a third world country? To be with and among the poor. Put your hands up high so we can see you. Now put them down. For those of you who just raised your hands, how many of you came back unchanged? See? So my brothers and sisters, what Francis is hoping is, as the word pope comes from a word pontifex, it means bridge builder. The question is, how do I become part of that ministry? How do I build a bridge between the community that has enough, that is nourishing, and connect it with maybe places it doesn't see? Not because of malice, but just because it doesn't see it, right? Now, how many parishes, and I know there's a bunch of here, how many parishes have had people who have represented your parish, gone to places far and away that you've never been before, and were able to create a link, a life-giving link between your community and somebody else? Are you with me? You see the power of this. Okay, so that's quote number one. I promise the rest of these go faster. Let's see. There's another, could somebody read the second paragraph for us, nice and loud? Testing. Good. Would somebody read the second paragraph? Yes. Thanks, Michael.
Yes. Number 2.
Yes.
I dream of a missionary option that is a missionary impulse capable of transforming everything so that the church's customs, ways of doing things, times and schedules, language and structures can be suitably channeled for the evangelization of today's world rather than for her self-preservation.
Yeah. So the last thing the Pope wants is a church that sort of hunkers down and says, we're not going anywhere, right? We are the holy people, right? Everybody comes here as holy. What we need to do is get more people on campus. And part of that is true, but that's not the church the Pope has in mind. Now, what I love about this text, and one of the reasons I picked it out, is this. Transforming everything so that the church's customs, ways of doing things, times and schedules, language and structures can be suitably channeled. In other words, my brothers and sisters, this is important because this is a sea change for us. This is not, let every parish community pray and hope that one of them will become Mother Teresa or maybe Dorothy Day. Let's pray and hope like just a few Marines show up. This is going to be the Green Beret division of our parish because they're the ones who are going to go. That's not what the Pope is talking about. So let me ask you this. When he says transforming everything, what do you think is not included in the word everything? Right? So everybody is invited. Well, not just invited, commissioned. No, not just commissioned, sent. We're all sent. Everybody. Nobody escapes. And my brothers and sisters, you see, this is the tough part. Oh my gosh, this is the hardest part in the world. This is why Jesus is so tough on people, for some people. From the outside, when you look at Jesus, you say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do Mother Teresa. Like, you can imagine Mother Teresa right here, right? And, you know, she's about this big. And so, anyway, so I think most Catholics have this relationship to Mother Teresa. I mean, we genuinely admire her, but this is how I imagine our full relationship. It's this. Please don't ask me to come. I mean, we really, and we have this kind of push me, pull me relationship. We just open. Mother Teresa does not call on the phone and say, could you come to Calcutta and help me with dying people on the street? You know, it's the same voice of Jesus, it's the voice of Jesus. But here's the thing, this is the interesting thing. From the outside, if you do that, you think, oh my gosh, who'd want to do that? I want to be in People magazine. But once you take a step in, once you're willing to get on your knees and say, your will, not mine, be done, and you step in and you begin to develop the affection for those who might have been left away, left aside, left behind, then you realize, I would not choose anything different. And now I'm ruined for life. You see my point? So this is the challenging piece for every one of us who maybe is looking at this from a distance, looking at Mother Teresa and saying, no, I don't think that I want to do that, is that somehow we have to take a step in, form relationships in places that have been left behind, and see what happens to us in grace's way. In grace's way. Okay, another voice, the third text. Luz, what a great name. Thank you.
The renewal of structures demanded by pastoral conversion can only be understood in the light, as part of the effort to make them more mission-oriented, to make ordinary pastoral activity on every level more inclusive and open, to inspire in pastoral workers a constant desire to go forth, and in this way to elicit a positive response from all those whom Jesus summons to friendship with him. As John Paul II once said to the bishops of Asciana, all renewal in the church must have mission as its goal, if it is not to fall prey to a kind of ecclesial introversion.
Ecclesial introversion, I bet that's the first time you read that one, right? And what does ecclesial introversion look like in your mind, right? Like, you can just see it, right? We're just going to hang out here and have a potluck, right? What we're going to pray before we eat, right? And we don't move, we stay. What I love about this, again, is the renewal of structures. Now, again, the idea isn't just, let's pray. It is that. But the renewal of structures means what? We change the architecture, not the physical architecture, although that could be included in other ways, but the architecture of what the parish actually does, what's in its bulletin, the kind of people it hires, and for what purpose, what the parish celebrates, who it invites in, who it sends forth, who it connects with, the language that it uses, right? Even, for example, when it baptizes babies, what it hopes for those babies. Baby, you are moving out at some point in your life, and we're going to prepare you for that, right? Really, that we're going to love you to death. We're going to love you so much that you will not be able to stand still. You'll be moving out because that's just the way we're going to make you, you see. See, it has everything to do with what do you imagine people looking like when they're Christians, right? And Francis talks about getting smelly, and you could guess what that looks like. Let's go to the next line. I don't want to run out of time. So the fourth text, who would read that for us, please? Thank you. Who's got the microphone? Okay. Thanks, Bill. Nice and loud so everybody can hear you.
The parish is not an outdated institution precisely because it possesses great flexibility. It can assume quite different contours depending upon the openness and missionary creativity of the pastor and the community. While certainly not the only institution which evangelizes, if it proves capable of self-renewal and constant adaptivity, it continues to be the church living in the midst of the homes of her sons and daughters. This presumes that it really is in contact with the homes and the lives of its people, and does not become a useless structure out of touch with people or a self-absorbed cluster made of a chosen few.
Do you notice how all these quotes have a little nudge at the end? You know, like you don't hang out. Well, here's what I love about this text. Now, read along with me. If you look at your paper, let's start with the second line and the very first word. Now, I'm reading flexibility. Do you see that? Okay, let's go a little bit near the end of that second line. The other word I want to point out to you, openness, okay? And then go down to the third line, creativity, and then go down another line, self-renewal, and then go down another line, adaptivity. And do you get the impression that the Pope is hoping that something will change? Right? This is an invitation, my brothers and sisters. Let her rip. Right? Let's try some things. This is a model that we don't know exactly how to do. Certainly lots of communities have known how to do it, the missionaries of charity, the Franciscans, the Jesuits. Right? There's lots of people who have been doing this, but it's never been part of the DNA of the parish. So maybe we'll make some mistakes. Maybe we get it right the first time. Who can say? But we can begin about re-equipping ourselves with staff. The staff is preparing people to, how do you change Minneapolis? What needs to be changed? And you could probably get to what needs to be changed in our city, what needs to be changed in our state, what needs to be changed in our country, what needs to be changed in the world, right? And we begin to gather, and then we say, well, one of the things we know we need to do, I'm going to talk about Louisville because that's what I know best. Inside the city limits, 70% of the children are on reduced lunch program because they're poor. Now, I just think to myself, what if, now these are just my imagination, what if the local bishop says, I'm going to pull together some of the smartest people in the community, some of the smartest business minds, some of the smartest strategic minds, some of the great lovers, and pull them together and say, look, there's 30 of you in the room. In 1 year, I want to plan, how are we going to solve poverty in our city? Now we have a mission, right? It's not everything, right? But it's part of the mission. And now we know what it means to be a mission-driven community because we know what we're hoping to accomplish. We begin to organize ourselves during that year, like the year of mercy. We begin to organize ourselves around what do we hope to see happen that gives glory to God, a God who created all of us and never intended for anybody not to have enough to eat or not to have a place to go to stay warm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now let me read the last one to you, and you can read along with me because I'm going to change one word. This is Pope Francis talking about Vatican II. So he writes, we must admit, though, that the Vatican II call to review and renew our parishes has not yet sufficed to bring them nearer to people, to make them environments of living communion and participation, and to make them somewhat mission-oriented. Actually, that doesn't say that, does it? To make them mostly mission-oriented. Oh, it doesn't say that, does it? I'm sorry. It says completely mission-oriented. Is that ambiguous? Right? So now, if you'll turn the page and go to the backside, here's some of my playful. This is just Jack talking. I'm really here just to kind of nudge you into your own creativity and your own imaginations about this, okay? So this is just Jack. So here's some things that I came up with because the Pope invited me to be creative. So I'm taking him seriously. So here's what I come up with. And so number one, now you notice in my little suggestions here, I say from to also. Now I'm not saying the church is worthless. That's not the point. Pope Francis is not saying that. It's just incomplete. So you don't leave what we know behind, you carry it with you, and you just flavor it with something else. So here we go. From how to equip people to be part of the sanctuary or the gathering place. So we do a really good job, don't you think? Sacramental prep. executing the sacraments and the celebration of sacraments. And I mean, there's some places when I go to Mass, I think, I can't breathe, it's so fabulous, right? So we do a lot of this really good. But also, so you carry that with you, how to equip people, how to equip you and I so that when I leave the exit doors, I know how to heal and make holy the world. Somebody needs to train me. That's the reason we have parish staff. So guess what? Some of the parish staff are going to have to retool. It's not just enough to know, for example, how to prepare people for sacraments. In fact, Pope Benedict said this: the church has three purposes, right? Preach the word, celebrate sacraments, and do charity, and they all presume each other, he said. In other words, and I'll unpack this for you, you cannot celebrate Eucharist well unless the community is one engaged in the world, healing and tending to wounds. That's a powerful statement. Right? Okay, on to number 2. From religious education focused on life on church property. Again, sacramental life is primarily what happens there. But also, and again, you don't leave this behind, you carry it with you, but also religious education focused on the human and global reality. So if the Pope gave us an example with the issue of the encyclical Laudato Si, some of the strongest, most challenging phrases I've ever read in any papal document is in that document. It is worth every parish not only reading it, studying it, and then figuring out how are we going to live this? Because otherwise, it's going to be another hot winter. From the parish, the local church, this is number 3, as a place of the pastoral care of its members. That's a good thing, but also the parish as a place of prophetic urgency for the local, for the poor and vulnerable who may not be part of the parish or the church or the neighborhood. You know, brothers and sisters, one of my favorite things, one of my favorite facts about the Catholic Church is this. You know, when boundaries get defined about who are the members of St. Mary's and who are the members of St. Joseph's and who are the members of Pax Christi or whatever it is. And so this has gotten a little looser, but you know where your home parish is, right? And you know who inside those boundaries the parish is responsible for? All the Catholics, right? Who? Catholics and Protestants, maybe. People who believe in Jesus. No? What? Everybody. Everybody. Now, wouldn't it be great if a parish kind of like Seventh-day Adventist, well, a little different, but just knocked on doors and said, hey, I'm a member of St. Mary's. I'm just stopping by to see if everything's okay. Is there anything going on in your life that we could help with? And she says, my son's sick, and it's been a real burden for me to take care of him. Well, how can we help? We would like to help. We have a team of people who do nothing but visit door to door and take care of people who are sick. Could we be a part of this? You see, in other words, how do you bring light and leaven to the world? Really, not just, I imagine light and leaven in the world. Now, how do I become light and leaven in the world? How do we become the body of Christ, the hands of Christ, the heart, the healing presence of Christ, right? So I'm being playful. These are just ideas to motivate your own imagination. Number 4, from a church renewal emphasizing belonging to a place, a people. Now, I'm just going to pause there. So many church renewal programs these days, right? And my brothers and sisters, I'm dissatisfied. I'm not happy with them. And so if you happen to be selling that program, I apologize. But because it's all about the parish block. And I think Pope Francis has something else in mind. The parish block is going to blossom when the community is committed to the world. The parish block is going to blossom when people committed to Jesus Christ, walking in the footsteps of Jesus, keep leaving the comfortable place and making links with people and bringing love and healing to the world. That's when the parish is going to rock. And now let me just say this. This is hard. The departure, the mass exodus of Catholics 19 to 41 is jarring. The data, the hard data, is jarring. My brothers and sisters, if you and I don't recreate this church, maybe we're the last generation of a viable community. So you know the best definition of insanity: keep doing the same thing and hoping something changes. My brothers and sisters, in my experience, you know what young people want? They want two things. They want a great big job to do. They want something that's going to give their life meaning, that's obvious, right? That compels them, that challenges them, right? And the other thing they want is they want to be trained to learn how to see God's finger in that work. So, now the church renewal, this is the half of 4. Church renewal emphasizing empowerment to transcend the familiar and the comfortable. So, when I'm over here and my community is loving me, what they're loving me for is a task. They're birthing me. They're birthing me to a whole life, a mature faith that has the audacity and the ability and the creativity to heal wounds in the world. Does anybody have something better to do with their life? And that's really I think that is the good news to the young. Do you have something better to do with your life than to be invited into an extraordinary journey in which you'll be challenged to your bones and you're going to love it? Because it happens every year. I mean, Jesuit Volunteer Corps is just one small example, and it happens all the time. Number 5, evangelization as a way of getting people to the sanctuary, so to be with us Catholics. And that's good. Keep that. And evangelization as a way of engaging people in the missional geography and active care of Jesus to be with everybody. Now, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to show you how Jesus calls the disciples. Are you ready? It's not, Jesus says, what I'd like to do is gather around a plastic table for 3 years. And after we have studied everything there is to be studied, then maybe we'll do something. No, it's actually an internship. So Jesus says, let's go. And all the disciples say, I am not ready. And you know what? They're not. But they're never going to be ready unless they start walking. So Jesus, if you will, leaves his hometown, leaves his family, starts to make his way over there. He's, come on, right? And then they do something. Jesus heals somebody, and the disciples say, what did you do? You know, a lot of their questions are so stupid, it's hard to believe. But what did you do? And then Jesus is able to say, this is why we do what we do. This is the God I am the son of. Are you with me? So the training, the formation happens on the road, which is just to say, keep your plastic tables, but don't spend all your time around them forming people. Form your people on the road. On the road. Let's see, where did my number, which number are we on? Oh, church 6. So when we say, what church do you go to, we're actually asking which block do you attend, right? That's what we mean. And what I'd like to see is when we talk about church going, it's like this. Where is the church going this week, Monday through Saturday? In other words, everybody's supposed to be doing something. Everybody's supposed to be going somewhere, making links, building relationships, and bringing healing and presence to the world. Number 7. Okay, tithing and church budget. So here's my proposal. Not just money for ourselves. Here's my proposal. Some of you have seen this on YouTube, but I'll just say it. 50% of all the church budget goes to the gathering ministries, sacramental prep, Bible studies, First Communion, and 50% of the church budget goes to the sending ministries, empowering people to change the world. What do you think? 50% of the staff, gathering ministries, 50% of the staff, sending ministries. Right? 50% of the homilies, come, we want to love on you. 50% of the homilies, you've been loved enough, get to work. The assumption, and prayer and discernment in the sanctuary, prayer and discernment in the streets. And my brothers and sisters, just to say this, I think it's very interesting when we ask the question. I used to work, when I was at Notre Dame, I was in campus ministry, and I'd have students come up to me, very, by and large, you know, Notre Dame students come from pretty comfortable backgrounds, in many cases really wealthy, and they are still spiritually searching. And I've sometimes had, you know, kids come up to me and say, what is God calling me to do? And that's one snapshot. Hold on to that. And it's mysterious. I don't even know what to say. About 2 years ago, I was in Oakland giving a talk, and Bishop Michael Barber, the bishop there, was hosting a pilgrimage through in a neighborhood where the day before there had been 2 drive-by shootings. The neighborhood was, of course, you could guess, very poor. Half of every other house was boarded up. And we just walked through with signs that said, "We are with you. We care. We seek to be a healing presence." And we walked through, and wherever we went, people were putting their thumbs up, and it was just, but we stopped for a moment, and Bishop Barber recommended we kneel. We did, and he just essentially said, "What do you think God is calling us to do?" And the answer was easy. Heal this place. Heal this place. Be part of the healing of this place. It's not mysterious. Now, my point is, the whole point of telling you this story is this. Sometimes it's not just what you pray, it's where you pray. If you pray in Haiti, the answers will abound. Lord, what are you calling me to do? If you pray on the 17th green, it will be mysterious. Don't slice. The answers are hard. The answers are difficult in places where we're so comfortable. They're hard to get at. And in some cases, they're not answers at all. They're distractions. So, on we go. Membership, number 10. From membership to also discipleship. Membership is good. Now, what does membership mean? I belong to you. This is my place. I love to be here. I love to pray here. I love the people here. I'm so glad I have a home base. That's one thing. And discipleship on the road. So my mom, my mom, my dad, their experience of their faith was largely molded by Vatican I. And so they defined their Catholicism by daily Mass, by being present, by paying a lot of attention to the church's needs. They came to the church a lot. And I have no argument with that. It was what they knew. It was what they were invited to. It was what was familiar. Now let's take another example. Mother Teresa. Literally, her ministry is on the road, isn't it? She's working with street people. Now hold on to those 2 images. Now, I'm just going to ask you. You pick up the Bible, you start reading the gospel. Do any of you know who Rick Steves is? He's an NPR guy who does their travel program. So if we could invite Rick Steves to read the gospel, which, by the way, he's a very committed Christian. He's on the board for Bread for the World and many others. Anyway, we could invite, pretending he never read the gospel before, he might do this. This Jesus guy, I wonder if he's read any of my books, because he sure travels a lot. He never stops moving. I mean, here's the question. Is Jesus a sanctuary guy, or is Jesus a road guy? He's a road guy. He has a proper respect for the sanctuary. He has a proper respect for prayer. He reverences those things, but he spends most of his time doing what? On the road again. You can hear it in your heads now, can't you? I mean, my brothers and sisters, if you want to follow Jesus, you're going to be moving. Right? Finally, number 11, Parish Church Sanctuaries Hangout, to the Parish or Church's launching pad. Again, it's kind of what I just said. And then finally, just to revisit what we've all celebrated just recently, the study of mercy, the year of mercy as a study of mercy, that's a great thing. But finally, we study mercy. Why? So we can do mercy, right? My brothers and sisters, I think there is this extraordinary invitation for us to consider how we might, in little steps, it's probably going to only happen in little steps, but step by step by step, invite each other to a kind of encounter that transforms us, transforms the world, and transforms our church. Thank you very much.